Hey everybody, it's Charles from HumbleMechanic.com. Today, I'm taking your questions on hybrid batteries, misfires, breaking in a new car, and more. This is episode 167 of the Humble Mechanic Podcast. All right, in order to get a question on a show like this, email me, charles@humblemechanic.com. Put question for Charles in the subject. Ask your question right at the top of the email. Then mash the enter button and give me the details. You can also use the contact me form anywhere on the blog. That's fine too, but I really like the email because that's what I use to filter out your questions. Also, if you don't see your question on a show like this, be sure to check the quick videos playlist on YouTube, where I typically take my iPhone and just shoot one video per question. I've also been talking about this Road to SEMA deal, right? This is happening in basically a week. So myself, Chris Fix, Eric the Car Guy, and a bunch of other really big time YouTube guys are meeting up in California. We're doing some meetups out that way, and then we're all driving to Las Vegas for the SEMA show. I'm gonna put a link in the description and on the blog for you guys to check out the Eventbrite invitation for the meetup. It's like 20 bucks. I think it includes food. You get to meet us, hang out. It should be a blast. There'll be more info coming out as well. So be sure on all the normal social media stuff to follow the hashtag Road to SEMA, all one word, of course, and that'll give you all the information you need. But check out the link I'm going to put in the description if you guys want to come and hang out with us. All right, one more thing before we get into the show. Let's talk about the sponsor of the day, which is CRP Automotive. CRP deals in a ton of OE maintenance and repair parts, timing belt kits, suspension components, and even fluids. In fact, they make the factory DSG fluid for Volkswagen and Audi. I will also be at the CRP booth at the Apex side of Apex SEMA show, taking questions, talking about a very number of topics. I'll be there each day for a certain time. So if you guys are going to the Apex show, be sure to come by the CRP booth and say hi. All right, with all that wrapped up, let's get into your questions. First one comes from Evan. Do you have any insight on how to properly break in a new car from the factory? I'm taking a delivery of a new car next weekend and would love some insight. Thanks. All right, there are two answers to this question. The first and official answer comes from, you guessed it, the owner's book. So this is the owner's book out of my wife's Tiguan. And what I did was I flipped to the back, found the section that said engine, and then went to the breaking in part. So I'm going to just go ahead and tell you guys what Volkswagen recommends on breaking in a new engine. A new engine must be carefully broken in during the first 1,000 miles. During the first few hours of driving, the engine's internal friction is higher than later when all the moving parts have been broken in. Engine life is influenced by how you drive the vehicle for the first 1,000. Even afterwards, driving at moderate speeds, especially when the engine is cold, will tend to reduce engine wear and help the engine last longer and go further. But do not drive at excessively low speeds either. Always downshift if the engine is not running smoothly. For the first 600 miles, do not use full throttle. Do not let the engine get above 2/3 maximum speed. Do not tow a trailer. From 600 to 1,000 miles, speeds may gradually be increased to a maximum permissible road and engine speed. So basically what this is saying, for the first 1,000 miles, be nice to it, let the engine warm up a little bit before you mash on the throttle. But there was actually another section in here about tires and brakes that I had never actually looked at, but I want to talk to you guys about that a little bit too. When it comes to tires, drive a vehicle with new tires especially carefully for the first 350 miles because the tires must first be broken in. Tires that are not broken may have reduced traction and performance. Install only radial tires, the same make, dimension, circumference, and similar tread profile on all four wheels, and tread depth of new tires can differ between tire models. Not a big deal on a brand new car. So again, it's telling you be nice to it and be careful to it for the first 350 miles. There was one more section about brakes in the new car break-in. New brake pads do not provide full performance during the first 100 to 200 miles and must first be, in quotations, broken in. To some extent, you can make up for somewhat reduced performance by applying more pressure to the brake. During the break-in period, the stopping distance for hard braking and emergency braking may be longer until the brakes are fully broken in. Avoid hard braking and situations that might require hard braking, such as following too close, especially during the break-in period. This is actually one that I always recommend people be really nice to your brakes when you first install new brakes, to let them set into the brake and the rotor. But if you gotta stop, mash the brakes because your life is more important than like 10,000 miles less brake life. So all of that being said, right? Volkswagen says be nice to the car for the first 1,000 miles overall. No full throttle accelerations, all that. Remember I said that there was two parts to this answer? Here's the other part. I promise you that these things that it tells you not to do have already happened to almost any new car that you buy. These cars are not like picked up by a helicopter from the factory and dropped at the dealership for no miles, ready for you to go. Maybe some are, like Ferrari and I don't know, a Rolls Royce, but I doubt it, right? Here's what happens. So the car gets on a train, a boat, whatever, and gets delivered to the country where it's going to be sold. So if it was built in Mexico, I think they train them to ports. If it's built in Germany, they probably put them over on boats. So that happens, right? Then when they're at port, they're moved around, shuffled around, staged to go to the dealers. Then they're put on a truck, then they're driven, then they're pulled off the truck. Next, what happens is the coordinator at the dealership gets them, inspects them, and parks them. Then what happens is a technician gets a hold of it and has to do what's called a PDI, or a pre-delivery inspection, or what Volkswagen calls it is a perfect delivery inspection. This is where we go through, we turn all the stuff on, we take it on a test drive, make sure everything works. Then the car gets cleaned up and ready for the lot. In that time, it probably gets about 10 to 12 people that drive that car, and I can only tell you that they're probably not as nice to the new car as you are going to be. I'm sure as a technician, a full throttle acceleration is part of a PDI. I'm sure as a technician, an ABS stop is part of a PDI because you need to test these things and make sure they work. I assume at port, they don't care at all, which is actually interesting because now, until the car is taken out of transport mode, you can't go over 25 miles an hour. So at least they've done something to curb that. Drivers of trucks that deliver the cars, I promise you, they don't care about those cars. They just are trying to get the cars off the truck as fast as they possibly can so they can get on to their next gigs. From my standpoint, if I had a new car that I planned on keeping, forever, would I be nice to it? Probably, right? I'd probably be nice to it. But I can tell you that it's already been not nice to. Also, think about people test driving it. What's the first thing you do when you get in a car and test drive it, right? Especially a car like a high-performance car. You give it some throttle. You want to see what it can do. You don't baby it for 600 miles, on a test drive. So things have already happened to almost every new car out there. Just, if it's yours, take care of it for the first 1,000 miles. Be nice to it. Let it warm up before you do full throttle accelerations, which is kind of a rule, right? Rule anyway. And you'll probably be just fine. But I do always recommend go to your car, get the book out, and see what it says, because the book in your car may be different from what mine says. All right, next one up is about a Porsche battery. Hey, Humble Mechanic, I'm working on a Porsche Cayenne hybrid. The battery is bad. Can I get a used battery for it? The model number is, and he gave me a part number. Would you help? I would love to help, and I would love to tell you, yeah, go get a used battery, it's no problem. But the odds of me ever doing that, 0, unless that was a remanufactured battery that came from the factory. The part number that he sent for the hybrid battery is a $7,000 some odd part, right? Not cheap. But how many people out there are rebuilding Porsche hybrid batteries? I don't know. My guess, probably not many. Or if they are, they're only doing it for Porsche, Volkswagen, Audi, and the other Volkswagen AG brands. I would stay clear of this 100%. Before I pulled that part number, I thought maybe it was a vehicle battery, the 12-volt system, and even at that, I'm not super comfortable with. This is a very expensive Highline car. It's going to be very expensive to replace these parts. I would absolutely stay away from any kind of used hybrid battery. Even though I don't have a ton of experience with Prius, with Honda Civic hybrids, and all the other hybrids out there, when it comes to used hybrid stuff, I would probably recommend always staying away from it. There may be places, since Prius and Civic is so much more popular, there's so many more on the road, that have found a way to rehab and then resell these batteries. But I would be really, really, really uncomfortable just like going to the salvage yard and getting one out, which I don't think you can do anyway. I think they have to be pulled and shipped to a recycler. But man, this is a crappy situation that you got to replace this battery, but I wouldn't try and save a little bit of money on this. Get it fixed right. It probably has to be programmed to the car anyway, if I had to guess. So you may not even be able to take one out of one car and plop it in another one. You may have to actually buy a new or a remanufactured one through Porsche, through Volkswagen, through Audi, or through whoever makes the vehicle, if we're talking about a different car other than this Porsche. But I would absolutely not do that. Now, I could be wrong. Some of you guys that are real hybrid savvy, throw it down in the comments section, but this is a dangerous game that personally I wouldn't want to play. All right, next one comes from Rich. I have a 2003 Dodge van with a 3.9 V6. Check engine light is on. I took it to AutoZone and they said misfires on cylinder 4 and cylinder 6. I changed the plugs, the wires, the coil, the cap, and the rotor, and the light is still on. Should I give it a compression test to see if I have a bad head gasket? Rich, so not a Volkswagen question, which is awesome. Thank you for that, because it's still a misfire question, right? There's only a few things that can cause a misfire, and especially a misfire on only a couple of cylinders. So you've replaced all the things that are really common to fail to cause misfires. Next step, I would run a compression test. The other thing you can do is you can, depending on the engine, if you can get to a place where you can swap injectors around, that's not a bad idea either. You can do that, and if the misfire tends to move to the cylinder that you swap the injector to, you have a bad injector problem. But at this point, yeah, if you can get to the spark plug well and pull the plug out pretty easily, go ahead and do a compression test. Some of these Dodge engines were known for burning exhaust valves. I know we saw them on even some of the newer ones, burning up exhaust valves, so that may be where you're at right there. But next step, compression test, and then depending on what you find, a cylinder leak down test, which is where we apply pressure into the cylinder, and then we try and find where the air is leaking out of to basically simulate the car running. You can also do a head gasket check. They make head gasket checkers that it's a chemical in a tube that you squeeze the ball and it pulls through the coolant to inspect for exhaust gas that way. Those work really, really well. So I'll try and find a link to one and put it down in the description so you can check it out. But yeah, man, you replaced all the easy stuff. Now it's time to step into the compression test level. One more thing, make sure that you clear the code, right? Sometimes cars get weird, and if you don't actually clear the code out, they may still continue to misfire even though you've fixed the problem. The ECM may be shutting down the spark to that cylinder because it thinks it's getting too much fuel or the injector's not working. It can also shut fuel down. And until you go in and clear the codes and reset them, that may continue to happen. One thing I think on a Dodge you can do is just disconnect the battery for a few minutes. That probably will reset it. Volkswagens don't work that way, but the Dodge may. So you could try that first and then go back to AutoZone and see if they'll clear the code, or buy one of the $25 code readers and try that, and then go into the compression test. All right, guys, got time for one more. This one comes from Fasel. Sorry if I messed your name up, man. I was happy to make my mind up to buy a German car, and I love the look of the Jetta more than the Golf. But when I found two cars and I have chose between them, I've been told to stay away from the 2013 Jetta Hybrid because there's a real issue in the gearbox which will cost me a lot to fix. I'll provide you with two VINs, and I hope you can tell me what you think, and if you could find out if these two cars were recalled and they're fixed their gearboxes. Okay, so he sent me two links to like vehiclehistory.com of two different Jettas. And I went through them. Dude, do not buy either one of those cars. They both show a total loss. This is why it's so important to get the VIN to the vehicle and do these checks. Spend $10 and run a vehicle history report on Carfax or wherever and see, because now you know, man, someone wrecked this car. In this case, two cars. Someone wrecked this car and it was deemed a total loss. Now, if you are a good technician or a body shop guy or a really good DIYer, you can handle it. Like if my Golf was a total loss, I don't care because I can fix everything on it. But for the average person, never ever buy a car that's been a total loss. It's not worth the savings for the hassle you're going to deal with. It's going to cost you more almost every single time than it would be to spend the money up front on the car initially and not worry about any of this nonsense of having a total loss vehicle. So I wouldn't buy either one of those two cars, man. Run, 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 run. As far as the 13 Hybrid, this is a car that I have had a fair amount of experience with. That's a pretty low production car, And I gotta say, you know, I hate to ever say don't buy this car, because I would have a real hard time recommending someone buy this 13 hybrid Jetta. You know, now they're 3 years old. They're probably most all out of warranty. There was a recall on the transmission, right? It wasn't to replace a transmission. It was simply a drain and fill fluid. I think it went from a synthetic fluid to a mineral-based fluid, because this is basically a manual transmission. Even after that, and I don't know that this recall was in any way related, if these things were fluid related or not. I have my doubts that they actually were, but we still had issues. We had mechatronic issues. I did a video on how that mechatronic fails. I'll try and link that up for you guys. We've put a bunch of transmissions in them. We've put e-machines in them. We've put one engine in them. You know, and we're a smaller dealership in the hybrid world, right? We don't have a ton of hybrids that roll through. We've had a fair amount of issues. So if it were me, and like my mom asked me, Charles, what do you think about me buying a 13 hybrid Jetta? I would tell her, Mom, don't buy it. And not just because I wouldn't want to work on it. She lives several states away, so I wouldn't have to. But I wouldn't want her to go through all the hassle that I've seen on those cars. So if you're insistent on a hybrid, that's great. I really struggle on that generation hybrid Jetta. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up there. Questions, comments, you know what to do. Don't forget, Road to SEMA. Hopefully I can see some of you guys out there. It's going to be a blast. You get to meet Chris Fix, so if you're a Chris Fix fan, you can finally see what his face looks like. Next week is SEMA, so I'll be a little bit disconnected. So if you're going to be at Apex SEMA, make sure you let me know. All right, don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube or on the blog at humblemechanic.com. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course on Snapchat. All right, guys, hey, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Drink of the day is just water because it's early in the morning, and I don't know, I like water.